Singapore's welcoming the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas and is committed to work with its Middle East partners to step up the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan says Singapore and its people have so far donated over 18 million Singapore dollars in aid, with another shipment of supplies to be delivered by air in the next few weeks.
For the past 15 agonizing months, too many people have suffered. There's been too much death and destruction. So at least now there is a glimmer of hope. There is light at the end of what has been a very long and tortured tunnel. I was in touch with the Prime Minister of Qatar. I congratulated him for his efforts, assiduous, painstaking efforts over the past 15 months to arrive at this stage.
Dr. Balakrishnan adds that Singapore will step up its engagement with the Palestinian Authority in the medium to long term to help in the area of capacity development. He repeated Singapore's position that there will need to be a negotiated two-state solution to this conflict.
That is the only way we're going to have comprehensive, just, and durable peace between these two peoples who are going to be permanent neighbors and do deserve to be able to live in peace and security and dignity.
The Minister in charge of Muslim Affairs, Masagos Zulkifli, says Singapore looks forward to various parties coming together to deliver much-needed aid to the Palestinians.
Singapore has always emphasized the need for access to humanitarian aid, and it's not been able to deliver it effectively thus far. And certainly in delivering them, we want to alleviate the suffering that the population have been imposed on because of the conflict. And now with the pause in hostilities, we are very hopeful that now aid can be delivered timely and earnestly.
For more on that deal on a ceasefire in Gaza, we're joined by James Dorsey, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Dorsey. The Israeli cabinet postponing its vote on the ceasefire deal. Earlier, we spoke to our correspondent. There were reportedly issues over Hamas demanding the identities be made or identification of Palestinian prisoners, because part of this deal is the exchange of prisoners for the release of Israeli hostages. This is difficult, but it is not the most thorny issue that's part of the ceasefire deal. If there's lack of success even on this, what does that say about the success of any kind of ceasefire and two-state solution on the Palestinian issue?
There's always a risk in announcing a deal, particularly in the Middle East, unless you have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed. Clearly, that is not what happened when the Qatari Prime Minister, as well as Presidents Biden and Trump, announced the ceasefire last night. The most glaring issue that we see is that there is really no indication of what the governance of the Gaza Strip will be on the day that the ceasefire comes into place. That's still something that has to be negotiated. And fact of the matter is that how post-war governance in Gaza is structured, that is what's going to determine the future of the Strip, at least for the foreseeable future, and probably shape any attempt to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The dispute that we have right now is relevant to that, because what it is about, it's about who among prominent Palestinians in Israeli prisons, some of them sentenced to long-term life or life sentences because of violent acts they allegedly committed. Those are, among them, are people who are the future leaders of a Palestinian entity, a Palestinian state. So these issues are all interconnected and really important, even if they look like they're minor details.
All right. There's been suggestion that a lot of credit for this it's premature, but when this deal was announced overnight, that the incoming US President Donald Trump should claim a lot of credit for driving it through. If he can claim credit for at least being part of a ceasefire, a deal being struck in Gaza, is this just a standalone ceasefire deal, or is this a start of a relatively comprehensive, consistent Trump policy on resolving this long-standing issue in the Middle East?
I think he does deserve credit. Fact of the matter is that the ceasefire agreement the agreement on a ceasefire that we have seen since yesterday is the agreement that was put on the table in May of last year by President Biden. And President Biden did not have the ability or the will to ensure that it gets past the finishing line. So for 8 months, we've seen the carnage continue in Gaza. And 8 months later, we're getting the same, more or less the same ceasefire agreement. The reason why is Donald Trump, whether one likes it or not. He made very clear that he wanted a ceasefire agreement by the time he gets inaugurated on Monday and takes office. Neither Hamas nor Israel was willing to get on his wrong side even before he gets into office. And of course, Trump's Middle East envoy is a hard-hitting, hard-moving, fast-moving businessman. He's not a diplomat, as is Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State. And as a result, he laid down the riot act to Mr. Netanyahu. And Mr. Netanyahu didn't have a lot of choice here.
All right, Dr. Dorsey, final question here. The ability or will of Donald Trump, Mr. Netanyahu might be wanting to sign off on this deal for his own aims. But for Mr. Trump, the big argument is that for him, the grand bargain in the Middle East is for Saudi Arabia to normalize relations with Israel. And Saudi Arabia is very clear about its position on that. It needs to see irreversible Israeli action for a two-state solution. That's still a non-starter for every party that counts at this point.
Indeed. So the assumption was that, based on the first term in office of Donald Trump, that he would be supporting Israel blindly. He would be supporting the settlements. He would be supporting annexation. And what this is signaling is that may not be the case. Trump he sees himself as the father of the Abraham Accords. With other words, the accords in which United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Morocco recognized Israel. The crown jewel in all of that would be Saudi recognition of Israel. The problem is that Israel's Gaza war conduct has raised the bar for Saudi Arabia. It can no longer look for a fig leaf for the Palestinian issue and establish relations with Israel. It needs something that is real. With other words, indeed irreversible path towards an independent Palestinian state. And that's if indeed Trump sticks to, and he signaled that that's what he wants to do, sticks to trying to engineer a recognition of Saudi Arabia by Saudi Arabia of Israel, then that puts him almost inevitably on a clash course with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Oh, thanks for that. James Dorsey there, looking at the possibility of any ceasefire deal and all the challenges that will have to be met for this deal to first be signed and then to actually be implemented. James Dorsey from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Nanyang Technological University.